We're about to join. Everyone's just hopping on.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I just want to introduce myself for those who don't know me, and then I'll introduce you to the lovely Nikki. So I'm Kimberly Sweeney, CDC Certified Divorce Coach, and we're recording this webinar tonight for all those that are joining us. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask us throughout the event, then please just type them into the chat and I will read them out, and between the two of us we will hopefully be able to answer some of your questions. Nikki is joining us tonight and helping to answer some of those questions. Nikki Bold is also a certified divorce coach and a mediator as well. So she brings a couple of great skill sets to the team. And tonight our focus is going to be around emotional management, co-parenting, and having more of an effective communication during the process of separation, divorce, and co-parenting, and hopefully some tools that will help de-escalate conflict as we go as well. So if you've got any questions in regards to any of those topics, then please type them in the chat and we will hopefully be able to answer them for you as we go. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Good to
Thank you
be
for,
here.
yeah, thank you for jumping on and at the end of a busy day and doing this with me. So I've got a couple of questions to get things started, and then I'll keep an eye on the chat and ask any questions that any of the participants need to be answered. So first off, what do you think is the most common challenges when it comes to people facing divorce emotionally? What are they dealing with when it comes to all the emotions of divorce
Yeah,
and
there are
separation?
some big emotions. So probably most commonly loss, sadness, fear, hurt. So it's really important to acknowledge those emotions. And even when things are amicable, you're still going to have some big emotions around the changes that are affecting your kids and your finances. And, there are also changes that occur with the wider family and friend groups. So we don't want to rely on that toxic positivity, just telling yourself you're fine and you should be over these big feelings. Or, maybe you've got a friend or your sister or someone that sort of moved through things quite quickly and you're still feeling quite stuck with these really strong feelings. Finding healthy outlets for relieving stress and taking some positive steps to improve your situation, those things are different for all individuals, but just that feeling of moving forward can be really helpful. So, some people really like to journal, or lots of people like yoga, sports, walking, music, but managing self-care is so
Mm,
important. Really
that's so
tough to manage
true.
those big emotions, and you're feeling tired, or maybe we've been drinking a little bit too much, or just not getting the rest or exercise to the levels that we need to feel better in our bodies.
Mm.
Yeah.
So a big part of that dealing with the emotions and helping to regulate them, as you're saying, is self-care as well, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And everyone's self-care can be different. Some people it is taking a walk on their own on the beach. Others it's taking a walk with friends. And as you've said, Nikki, meditation and yoga and all those things really help you to just calm your system, which helps to calm your cortisols, which helps to reduce the stress, which helps you then cope with the emotional overload of it all, doesn't it?
yeah. And
Mm,
it's anything that takes you into that sort of state of flow where time seems to go really, really fast. It could be just reading a good book, but doing something that's for
mm,
you that just gives you a bit of a break from those feelings is quite nice.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. And so, what other resources or support networks are there um, for um, for parents navigating, the challenges of co-parenting and the emotions that come with the challenges of co-parenting?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, would have the support of friends and family. And it can be really super tough, having two people in the home, even if you're not getting on really well, you've got another person there if you need to nip out and go do something, or work's run on a little bit late. And then suddenly, with this co parenting situation, you can feel quite alone in that.
Mm.
So the main thing is to keep the children's best interests at heart. And it can be really, really helpful actually to have a shared calendar, so those scheduling mishaps don't happen. That's a big cause of conflict.
Mm,
And there are tools out there. So, for example, our Family Wizard, it's a really great sort of one-stop shop communication app.
mm,
And that actually records all the communication.
yeah.
So sort of avoids any of that, oh, I didn't say that, or that wasn't the arrangement. It actually records what is said, just helps you manage your schedule, your expenses, gives you the ability to share some information about your children in a secure way. And
Mm,
actually, this app even has a tone meter. So it
mm,
kind of captures language that could cause conflict. So something like that's great. And that actually is fully subsidized in some cases. So something like that's really worth a look. But lots of other options. Some parents use Splitwise, some parents just have a Google Calendar. Lots of ways to manage it. It's working out what works for your family, what apps can you get. Sometimes you don't even have the same kind of phone. You've got Android versus iPhones. There's lots of things to think about, but there's always a
mm.
way.
Yeah, and I do find that with even the most untechnical people in the world, the My Family Wizard app does work quite well.
Yeah.
Or Google shared documents and shared
Yes.
calendars are also a cheap alternative way to manage communication around co-parenting and as you've said, Nikki, sharing schedules and even sharing little photos and updates of the
Yeah.
children when they're not in your care, like it's nice to receive those little messages and it helps the kids feel connected to both of you still. So it's a really good way to not only share memories and what's going on in each household, but also, yeah, keep the conflict to a minimum and keep it in one place with all the communication. So it's a really great tool to have, that isn't it? I do have one question in the chat from somebody asking, what tips do you have to calm yourself when you've got different age children full time? So when you're not co-parenting, it sounds like, but you'll be dealing with it all on your own. What can you do to calm yourself?
Right. And so different age children. So this is part of where it gets complicated, right? So what's going to work with a 4-year-old probably won't work with a teenager. So it does depend on what the ages of those kids are. But sometimes actually you can enlist the help of the older children. If you can have a conversation with your eldest along the lines of, hey, you know what? Today has been a bit much for me. Would I be able to get you to give me a hand with X, Y, or Z? And often older kids, they'll respond really well to that. If you're
Mm.
already in conflict with that child, though, might be a different story. And some of it's around, hey, when are these stressful situations occurring? What's the trigger for when things start to go wrong? And for little ones, sometimes it's around that scratchy time when they're feeling hangry, it's pretty much nearly ready for bed, and it's that bath time routine. That can be a real catalyst. We used to call it the witching hour in my
Mm,
house. And maybe planning ahead if you can for those times. Easy dinners. No one's going to die if you have bagels and eggs on toast and fish fingers every now and again. Don't put too much pressure on yourself.
mm,
The main thing is that the kids are loved. And, this is where the self care comes in as well. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating right for yourself, when these things come up with the kids, you just don't have as much in the tank to be able to have that patience. There's actually some really good tips in non-violent communication, which is a bit of a mouthful, right? But it's a way of talking to anyone, not just children, about expressing what you need from them. And it's a really great way of doing that without using any inflammatory language. There's lots and lots of videos and articles online about NVC, and that can be super helpful. But there are parenting experts out there. If the situation is really super difficult and you haven't got support from wider family and friends, but yeah, it can be super tough. Kids know
mm,
how to press our buttons,
mm,
but
mm,
yeah, having some really consistent boundaries, some house rules that make sense to them, like sometimes sitting with the kids and working out what's going to work for our family. How are we going to do these things? How do we speak with each other? What happens when we disagree? What's our agreement around how much TV we can use or phones or whatever it is? Thinking about what's causing the conflict. And there's usually it'll be, a few things that are happening over and over again and trying to figure out a way of just making that easier.
And as you say, they happen over and over again. So, what is this pattern? Recognizing the pattern. Sometimes it is how we as parents respond or react to what's going on in the household. So, what can we do differently to get a better outcome when we are a single parent doing the full load of parenting and working and everything else. So, it's not only, having those expectations of your children, especially if they're little, they don't understand, but it's the expectations you have on yourself as well. And we can't be everything to everybody. So it is about giving yourself a break as a single parent. And that is like not in a stop break, but like give yourself a break, like you can't do everything all the time. And as Nikki said, fish fingers or spaghetti on toast sometimes is okay, as long as they've got food and they've had sleep and they're warm and they're rested, then you're doing the best you can. But I think one of the big things as a single parent that I learned, and I know I see it with a lot of my clients, they don't ask for help. They feel like we become a martyr in it, right? Especially if we're dealing with conflict and still dealing with a difficult co-parent or what have you. We get a bit drawn into the drama, and instead of asking for help and reaching out to family or friends, they want to help, they want to be there for you. So give yourself some time out and let somebody else take care of your kids for an hour on the weekend or something, so you can go for a walk and reduce that stress level and come back calmer and more engaged in the home again.
Yeah, and even little kids, they pick up on things, right? They'll see that you're starting to get a bit wound up,
Mm.
and you can actually turn it into a little bit of a game. When you start to feel, oh, I'm gonna just absolutely lose my rag here, using some breathing techniques for yourself. There's techniques such as box breathing, for example, or there's a really little easy one that you can do with little kids, right? And say, hey, mummy's starting to get fast breathing. I need to slow it down. Will you breathe with me? And you breathe in like a big breath in with an in breath at the top. So, like this. And then you let it out. And then you do right click, left click, clap. And it actually helps your brain. Do it a few times and it calms you down. And the kids can do it with you. And usually they'll end up laughing and it's a bit of fun, but it actually just de-escalates that tension. So all of these things, it depends on the ages and stages of the kids.
Mm.
If you try that with a teenager, they'll just tell you you're loopy and that'll be the end of that. But for little ones, that can
Mm.
be a good way.
Yeah.
And it also teaches them that, yeah, mum might be getting, or dad might be getting a bit wound up or upset, but actually they can calm themselves down and it's going to be cool. The
Mm.
adult has got this. But
Mm.
you know what? I really feel strongly that what you just said before, Kimberly, about how alone you can feel, really important to reach out. And if you are feeling that way and you can't afford any support from a professional, like in a divorce coaching way, please do send us an email at the Institute, because all of our coaches offer some time each as a volunteer to be able to help people who can't afford to get help. So, we don't want anybody out there who's alone, and hopefully we're going to get some funding to be able to help more and more people in that way. We feel strongly that everyone should have access to that support.
Mm.
But yeah, please do reach out. You are not alone.
No, you are not alone. And we've been through it, and we help people on a daily basis to show up better and be better so that they can, thrive and survive the process, because we do understand how hard it is. Now, I do have another question here in relating to that topic. It's do you think it's a good idea to take time off work if you are a working mum or dad, just to relieve the stress and have time for yourself? It then involves telling work what's going on, is their
Mm.
question. So yeah, it's like, do you tell work? That's a question on its own, right? Do you tell them what's really going on? Do you just take a mental health day for yourself and send the kids to school? I'm going to say yes. What are you going to say, Nikki?
I'm going to say a big 100% yes. You
Mm.
know, you can be at work physically and mentally, you are off somewhere else because things are just too overwhelming.
Mm.
Well, really, what would work prefer? That you sat there and tried to do your job, maybe made some mistakes, were really unproductive, or they rather you had the time to just take a break?
Mm.
It's really important. If you really don't feel comfortable talking to your employer about it, almost everybody these days will understand a mental health day.
Mm,
They
yeah.
don't tend to ask questions about it, but you might be surprised. If you
Mm,
were comfortable enough to confide, a lot of people in your workplace will have also gone through separation and remembered that time and will want to support you. So
yeah.
really it's up to you, but I would say yes, 100%.
Yeah, and remembering that a lot of workplaces have support these days with EAP schemes and that. So if you if you don't want to talk to your boss, you could go to HR. If you're in a big corporate firm, talk to somebody that manages that aspect of things. And if there is the ability to have some free counselling or what have you, then it might be a good idea to take that mental health day, but go and have some active counselling or do something that will help you.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. The work doesn't need to know everything. They don't necessarily want to be your counsellor, but if they've got a little bit of an understanding of what you're going through, I'm sure that they will understand and have something that they can help you put in place.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so back to the conflict, because I think that that's a really important thing to help people find ways to deal with and de-escalate conflict. And we have a thing called BIF, don't we, Nikki, that we do often talk to our clients about. And BIF is a response of how to respond, and it's mostly in an email or text form of communication. And BIF means keep it brief, informative, firm, but friendly. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, Nikki, and how because you use it a lot with your mediation as well, don't you?
Yeah. So
Mm,
Bill Eddy came up with this BIF, and again, you can find lots of information online and lots of information about how to use this. But if I was to make, let's see, what would something typical be? Okay, so say a client of mine might have received a text from the ex that says, "You're so stupid. You've forgotten to put Jamie's football gear in his bag. I should just make him go without his uniform or tell him it's your fault. You're too dumb to remember he's got a game on Saturday and I'm not going to come and get it." Something like that. That's
mm,
a bit mean and a bit strong. A Biff response: brief, apologize for forgetting Jamie's football gear. Informative, I understand that he needs his uniform for the game on Saturday. Friendly, appreciate you letting me know. I'll make sure he has everything he needs next time. And then firm, I'll drop the gear off so he has it for the game. So there's no need to necessarily explain why you forgot the gear or, well, you forgot it the week before or anything else. Just, okay, yeah, sorry about that. It'll be
yeah,
there. And when we this is when we start to get a little bit fraught with our communication, because we're always trying to justify ourselves. So there's another acronym, the JADE acronym, right, Kimberly? Justifying, argue, defending, and explaining. If we can avoid doing those things and
mm,
just respond to the bit that needs responding, which is, this kid hasn't got his football gear. Cool, we can solve that. I'll drop it off.
yeah,
So we do really need to think about practical ways to de-escalate conflict, because the worst thing about conflict is that it's the children that really get hurt. So if it's not text or email, really trying to pick the time and place. So if you know the conversation is going to get heated, please don't have it in front of the kids. Parents fighting in front of their kids, this scares kids and it hurts them. So picking a time and place that suits both of you, and making sure the children are not present. Using I statements rather than you, because when we say you did this, you made me feel, can make the other person feel blamed or criticized. And then, your message is actually going to get lost due to
mm,
that delivery.
yeah,
So if we want that other person to really hear us, putting them into that kind of defense or offense mode, that won't help. So yeah, this is work that I really do enjoy doing with clients, because those skills, they're not just for communication with ex-partners, they're actually life skills. So the other thing it helps to do is just to stick to discussing the relevant issues and don't let the conversation stray into other topics as well.
mm,
So that's
mm,
quite common, isn't it? You start
yeah,
on one track and then suddenly we've moved on to something else.
yeah, and that's so true. It's like, that's what's good about the BIF response, because you're keeping it brief, and by keeping it brief, it stops that backwards and forwards, and often as a co-parent, I can speak from experience, we try and not have that tension or those disagreements in front of the children, but then it moves to email or text because we're doing it quietly, trying to resolve these issues so that our children don't hear. But in that, it ends up being a back and forward, and it's not de escalating, it's escalating it, right? And so it's finding ways to respond with, as Nikki has said, that brief but informative, firm but friendly, but to the point, and just keep it to the topic at hand. Because if we're trying to address multiple, problems, it's just going to escalate out of control, and then there's going to be no resolving it and no coming back from it. So just, yeah, I think focusing on one topic at a time is a really essential part of it all. I've got a couple more questions that have come in. I'm not keeping up with the questions tonight. Let me just scroll back through. So we've got one that's, do you advise having the school aware of what's happening for the children? And would you tell the children that the school know of the situation? So yeah, that's a good point. Like, do the children need to know that the school know as well as do the school need to know?
Mm. As always, everyone's different, right?
Mm,
But generally speaking, yes, you probably do need to let the school know, because there might be a change in who's picking the kids up, for example, or when children are in shared care situations, who's the parent that should be called on those days, right? So
mm,
if you've got a child who's gone to school in the morning, seems to be well, but is now sick, if we haven't let the school know what's going on, they might be desperately trying to get a hold of dad when in fact it's mum's week, and those kind of things.
mm,
Also for them to just watch out for changes in behavior, because this can be tough on kids, if it's particularly if it's parents who are struggling to communicate with respect and calmly. So sometimes kids will start acting up in school, and it's just really helpful if the teacher knows to look out for that. They can help kids manage it, gives them a lot more patience for that kind of behavior as
mm,
well.
mm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's only my opinion, but I do think it's helpful that the school knows. And should you tell the children that the school knows? Well, we're probably thinking teenagers here, because little kids, it'll go right over their heads.
Mm,
But I guess I'd be thinking about what would prevent the kids from wanting the school to know, because that's
mm.
something you might need to address.
I
Yeah.
think that when it comes to teenagers, it's probably a good idea to talk with them directly first and say, would you like me to let your head teacher know, or what, whoever their main teacher is that looks after them at least, right? But if they say no, you've kind of got to respect that as a teenager. But obviously, if there is starting to be behavioural changes at school and the school is coming to you saying what's going on with your child, then at that point it is probably good to just let them know on the side that there are things going on at home. But yeah, you get young children, I mean, as Nikki said, it's not really a huge need at a young age to let the kids know that the school knows, but having a quiet word with their direct teachers, and then handing into the office lady your parenting schedule so that they know what,
Man,
office man, office person. Yeah,
office.
so they know who to call on what day. Because as a busy working parent, there's nothing worse than getting the phone call when it's not your day, and then you have to ring the other parent to let them know, and it all just kind of makes things a little bit more challenging for that co-parenting relationship. So the schools are generally happy to work around a co-parenting schedule as long as they know what parent they call on what day. So that's where it's really important to have a really solid co-parenting plan in place that has the kid's schedule. And this kid's schedule, it kind of has to be very similar week to week. So some parties do, a 2-2-3 model where they're 2 nights with one parent, 2 nights with the other parent, and then 3 nights over a weekend, alternate weekends with each parent. And in that case, the school completely knows which day is whose day. If it's week on, week off, then you probably just have to let them know that for the whole year ahead, what weeks each parent has, what, the children, so that they know which week they're calling who. So it does make it a little bit more challenging, but thinking ahead, planning ahead, and putting those parenting plans in place helps with things like the school scheduling and all those things as well.
And often, if you've got one parent who's the primary caregiver, most of the communication's probably gone to that one parent. Whereas if we're now two homes, then it's important that both parents actually get all that communication.
Yeah.
So they know when the assemblies are or the sports days or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and
yeah.
most schools now it's all run on apps, and so as long as both parents are set up on the school app, then they can log in from their own app and check what's going on. So it makes it easier than communicating between parents sometimes as well about certain things. I've got another couple of questions here. One is, what can you do when your ex-spouse continues to not respond to any communication at all?
So
That's
that's
challenging.
really tough. And, that's sometimes referred to as stonewalling when you're just getting absolutely nothing back. Now, it really depends on the circumstances here because if we're talking about, oh, I've been sending photos of the kids that I thought my ex would like, and they're not saying thank you or even acknowledging them, well, that's one thing. If they're not acknowledging when you're actually trying to discuss things that affect your children, so for example, somebody's sick and you need to sort out care or anything like that and you're not getting any response, I guess it's also going to depend on whether this is a co-parenting relationship, like
Mm,
who's actually got the kids. Have you got them full time and your ex is not responding and not seeing the children? Or, yeah, there could be all sorts of, if whoever's asked that question is most welcome to sort of add a little extra detail so that we can give you a more specific
mm,
answer. But the long and the short of it is we actually cannot control what the other person is going to do,
no.
right? So it's a really tough thing, and this is something as co-parents, it's a real struggle sometimes to let go of, hey, when the kids are with you, I actually have to let you manage the children the way that you see fit in your home.
Mm,
Hopefully we've got some cohesion there around boundaries and rules and bedtimes and all the rest of it, but actually we can never control that other person.
no.
So trying to get a response. If that's not working, we've got to look at what's underlying that. Are they afraid that there's going to be a really combative interaction? So they just
Mm.
think it's better just not to respond. Are they doing it to maintain control? What's the reason for this lack of communication?
Mm, mm. And it can be challenging, when you're the person trying to communicate, and I do understand that. And that's where maybe the our family wizard app comes into play, because you can see that they've read it. And so if they choose not to respond, then you've done your best, and you can show that you've tried your best to communicate with that parent, and it's all in the app. That app can be used for legal meetings and mediations and in court, to prove that, I have been the parent trying to communicate with this parent and I'm getting nowhere. And the other thing to consider is, parallel parenting, and that might be something, if you've not heard of that, to Google parallel parenting. And it's a little bit of what Nikki touched on, that you can't control what happens in that other house, as long as you know that your children are being well cared for, they're safe. If that parent, for whatever reason, doesn't feel they can communicate with you directly, then you've just got to trust and parallel parent, and let them do what they need to do when they're with that other parent. There's probably a good idea, again, in a parenting plan with that parent, is to say, we'll parent via the app or via email, with communication around what the kids need, but in an emergency only, we will text or phone, so that you know that if there's been a text or a phone call come through from the other parent, then this is an emergency and I need to address it or take the call.
So
Otherwise,
urgent
keep it
or
to email.
emergency, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So that helps that parent that doesn't want to communicate a lot feel that they can go to the emails and check the app
mm,
for day-to-day comms, but when it's an emergency, you would hope that they can address a text or an urgent phone call.
mm.
Hmm. All right, we've got another question. What should you do if you lose it and behave badly in front of the children or to your ex, and how can you come back from it?
Wow.
Hmm. Well,
You
we've
know,
probably all done
yeah, yeah.
it. We're only
Yep.
human,
Then
but we
it's
learn, and
not
we,
restricted to divorce and separation. People who are happily married will also lose it.
yeah.
So, yes, we're always conscious that conflict harms the children. So we always say this, it's not divorce that harms the children, it's the conflict that they experience throughout the divorce between their parents, right?
Mm,
So we
mm,
do want to avoid that. But we don't tend to plan to have a big fight. Sometimes it just happens. The
mm,
main thing is to bring those kids back to you. And you know, there's no harm in saying, hey, you know what? I actually didn't cope with that very well. I feel that, you know, the way that that happened was, if I could do that again, I'd do it differently. Or when I said those things, that was me being angry. What I was really saying is, I'm not coping very well today, and I actually just need a cuddle and like bring them back in. And again,
Mm,
depends on the ages of the children, but kids are super resilient, super forgiving. They
mm,
really just need to know that you, as the adult, you've got this. And if you've got a momentary lapse, okay, but they just see you coming back together again.
yeah.
Now, if you're not coming back together again, that's when you need to reach out,
Mm,
because, you know, when we lose it like that, we are flooding our body with adrenaline and cortisol. And those things are designed to help us in fight or flight to get away from danger, right? So, the danger, it's not like we're running away from a bear. The danger that our brain is seeing is this conflict. And it can be really hard for us to come down from that. So sometimes those breathing techniques, it could be just taking a quick walk if that's possible for you, not leaving children at home who are not old enough to take care of themselves. But I mean, sometimes you can all be like, hey, look, you know what? I really need to clear my head. Let's grab our shoes, let's get the dog, let's go for a walk around the block, and then, you know, we can talk about it.
mm,
But just making sure that they know that actually, yeah, you've identified that that behavior wasn't great,
mm,
and you've let them know that you love them,
mm.
really, they're going to be fine.
Yeah,
And it does happen.
it
Yeah,
does
no
happen.
point beating yourself up over it, because as Kimberly said, we all do it.
Mm, mm. And we learn how to do better. And if it's a cycle that you can't break, then that's where a divorce coach or a communication coach or somebody can come in and just help to give you a few more tools and tips on how to do better. Because it just takes one of you to show up differently and improve the communication, and the other one usually will follow suit in time. They might not straight away, but they will start to notice that you've changed the way you're communicating and coming into a conversation, and eventually they will be less heightened themselves, because usually when it's a conflicting co-parenting relationship, you both go in with your heckles up. But if one of you can just start off in a more calm way, and as Nikki said earlier, use the I's instead of the U's. We're not going to accuse, we're not going to blame, we're just going to go, I feel, so giving yourself some tools and tips on how you can do better often helps with that communication conflict
Yeah.
as
So,
well.
really, the answer to that question is, give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up. It's good to be self reflective. I mean, we all, off we go to bed and we lie there and think, oh, I should have done that differently. Well, that's okay. You've had that thought. But now, instead of thinking I should have done that differently or I did this wrong, think about, what would I do next time? Or what was I feeling, like literally in my body? What was I feeling before I got to the point where I lost control?
Mm,
Because we all start, you know, your heart rate starts to go a bit harder. You might start clenching your fists or clenching your jaw. We've all got things physiologically that happen before we actually lose emotional control. So being aware of what's going on in your body, that can really help you think, okay, ahead of time, I'm starting to get to that place. And maybe then having some strategies there, which could include just taking a quick break, saying to the kids, hey, look, I need a minute, I'll be back, or whatever's suitable for the age of the kids. And then just giving yourself that chance to do some breathing, do some anchoring, going back to, hey, what do I want my kids to remember about me? What am I doing anything for in this life? It's all for them. So just visualizing them, thinking of some happy memories with them and coming back to them. And I remember my mum saying to me, who had 6 children, it's quite a lot of kids, she said, if you actually ever feel like, you know, giving your kids a good smack or something, you can be so angry, get down and look at them in the eyes. And when you see those little eyes looking at you, usually those feelings of anger will melt away. So sometimes that's the answer, is actually getting closer to the kids. But you've got to know what's good for you and what's going to work in the situation. And if you're already in that state, then probably moving away from the kids is a better thing until you've calmed down.
and then coming in for that hug and that eye contact, because you're right, like when you sit in front of your children, you remember what it's all about. It's about them, and it's about cherishing them and protecting them. Yeah. And so when we talk about protecting, I think that takes us to our next question, which is, if you can control how you show up and how you communicate, and you can be the better person in the process, but you can't obviously control how your co-parent is behaving or responding or misbehaving. So how do we put boundaries in place around their behavior and what they're doing, Nikki? What can we do to put those boundaries in place to just protect ourselves or our children?
Yeah, well, so knowing that we can't control other people, if you're going to set a boundary, don't make it about what they do, right? It has to be a boundary that you have got control over. So, for example, if the ex is always late to pick up the kids, you can say, well, you have to be here on time. Okay, well, we've probably said that and it's still not working because it's about what they do. Whereas if we say, hey, I've noticed, so we make an observation and it needs to be a genuine observation. So it might be, hey, I've noticed that for the last 2 months, you've actually been late for pickup every Friday. So that's an observation and it's stated as a fact, not an accusation. I've noticed. And then it might be around, hey, if you can't be here by 5:30 and you let me know by sort of 5 o'clock, that's cool. But if I haven't heard from you and you're still not here at 5:30, I'm going to be going with the kids. We'll probably go get some pizza or do something else, and you can pick them up the following day. So we're not relying on this other person. We're saying very clearly, this is my boundary. If you're not here by then, well, then the kids and I are going to go do something fun and you can see them tomorrow. And as long as you stick to those boundaries, usually they do work really well.
Mm,
If you are going to then still wait around until 7 o'clock, your ex is going to know you really didn't mean it.
mm.
And they will continue to push the boundary because the boundary's not there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Stating a boundary and then adhering to it are two different things, right? You need to follow up with
Yeah.
what you say. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, one of my questions is, Nikki, people often like to vent, vent to friends and let all their emotions out to friends and family. Do you think that's a good strategy for dealing with your emotions, to talk to
It's
friends and
certainly it's a
family?
really human thing to do, and we don't want people bottling up their feelings. So sharing how you feel with people that you trust, that's an opportunity to actually talk it through, get clarity on what those emotions mean, maybe even get some help with that problem solving, because the people we confide in might share a different perspective or have some ideas that are helpful. But for a lot of people, that kind of temporary fix you get when you're in that moment and you're venting, if you keep experiencing that over and over again, it can actually cause you to get more stuck in that position. Probably all had the friend and they're going through a really tough time, but you just hear them telling the same story to everyone that will listen, and it's actually keeping them stuck. So venting, if it's done in a productive way, yes, really good. Let it out. Let somebody hear you, be there for you, maybe offer you some support or guidance if that's what you need. But if it's just more from a, hey, this is a really bad situation that I'm in perspective, telling yourself that and everyone else over and over again is going to make it feel even more true. And then
Mm.
we kind of get that powerlessness or that helplessness that we are stuck here and we're never going to be able to get out.
And it's that mindfulness, right? It's every time you say those negative emotions and words, and you bring that negative energy into your life, you become stuck in that phase of life. And we want to turn that around and be more positive and show ourselves in a more positive light to our friends, family, and our children, because otherwise they're not going to want to hang out with you after a while.
Oh,
They're going
no,
to get sick of hearing it.
it can have that effect. And you know what you're saying just there, if we fill our bodies full of McDonald's, we know that we're not going to be super healthy. If we fill our brains full of negative self-talk and all the reasons why everything is terrible, well, imagine what that's doing then to your brain.
Mm,
It's forming this new normal of what
mm,
things are like, and it becomes true for people.
mm,
We're actually wiring our neurons to believe that to be true. And then
mm.
it can be really,
Mm.
really hard to get back out again.
Yeah. And look, some of what you're saying is true, some of it may be half true, but the more you say it, the more it becomes more real, and then you're
Mm.
creating what you want from life. So if you want to create a better life, then it's like turn it around, turn it around and get some help with a counselor or a divorce coach. That's what we do. We're the ones there to vent because we're not going to be the friend that keeps the frustration and the anger and the emotions going. We're going to help you turn it around and de-escalate your thought process so that you get better outcomes for you. Mm. Well, we've got a couple more minutes. If anyone else has got any more questions, quickly type them in the chat. Um, I was going to ask you about the breathing techniques, Nikki, but we did cover off that. But if anyone does want a PDF or a Word document with breathing techniques that you can use for yourself or your family, because I know when you're on a call like this, it's hard to remember what it was she said. We'll have some free resources that we can send out to you, and they will be on the website soon as well. So just reach out if anything that we've talked about tonight sounds like it might be helpful or useful for you, and we can send you any documents that we have that we do usually give to our clients to help them just reduce their stress and put some self-care in place as well.
Yeah, we've mentioned a few names and said, look, we've got videos out there and articles out there. Again, if you didn't get a chance to write things down, just send us an email. Use the contact form on the website and let us know what you'd like. We're more than happy to help. We love reaching out to people and sort of sharing this stuff because we know
Mm,
that if you find a technique or a strategy that works for you, well, you'll be able to pass that on to somebody else as well when they're going through a tough time. And in this way, we can actually really affect a big change in the community and our wider families, make things better for people at work, as we were talking about. It makes me sad to feel that people would not want to disclose that they're going through a separation at work. Like, we should be working in places that will pick us up when we're down and give us that. Because to be fair, most lawyers don't work weekends and evenings. If you do need legal advice, you might need to take some time out to go and do those things. If the worst came to the worst and you ended up in court again, that's not sort of outside of business hours. So
they do
yeah,
need to understand what you're going through so that if you do need that time off, and even for mediation, you can go to mediation. I think we talked in our last webinar, and if you weren't on that webinar, please go to our website. It'll be uploaded on the resources page this week. You can watch that one. It's quite an informative one about all these different things that are out there for you. Which one is FDR mediation? And you might need a half day or a day off work to go to mediation to put a parenting plan in place and work through those things. So work do need some understanding. They don't need to know everything, but they do need some understanding of what you're going through. Now, I've got one more question before we finish up, Nikki, if you're up for it.
sure.
What can you do when you are so overcome with fear about the future that you can't make any decisions at all?
So many people feel that way because they are big decisions. Yeah. The decisions you make at this time about the future of your finances, the future of your kids, they are going to have repercussions, and it's worth just letting that weight sit and not making decisions in a hurry. So,
Mm,
the
mm,
first step is get out of fight or flight. When this part of our brain, the old part that keeps us safe, is active, this bit that we need for the problem solving, it has shut right down. So we've got to move from those spaces. And, most of the work we do really is around helping clients make their own decisions. So reality testing, sometimes we look at a problem and think there's this binary choice. It's either this way or this way. And actually, when we start talking it through, we come up with a whole range of options.
mm,
So yeah, if you're struggling with these decisions because actually you're not taking care of yourself or you feel that everything is just too overwhelming, reach out for support. That's step one. You shouldn't ever feel like you're trying to do all this
mm,
alone.
mm,
If it's more around, well, hey, I've got good self-care and my kids are easy, but I'm just petrified. I've never dealt with the finances before, or I know that if things don't go my way, I might not have enough for my retirement. Those sorts of things. Well, people like divorce coaches, we are here to help with that. Um, the decision is always yours. We don't make decisions for you, but what we do is we help you determine, hey, what are my needs?
mm,
And then what are my wants? and the objective criteria. So, what are the reasons that I've come up with? Say it's a figure that you feel like you need for a retirement. How did you come to that figure? Let's really work it out and see if that really is what you need. Just breaking it down into smaller pieces, making sure it all makes sense.
Mm, yeah, there's a lot to think about when it comes to, you know, all aspects of separation and divorce, but it is about just slowing it down, getting some expert perspectives, you know, reaching out to different people, whether it's a family lawyer, a mediator, a divorce coach, a financial expert. There's lots of different people that can help people going through this, give you some answers and some ideas on what your future holds so that you can then make a better informed decision
I
once
will
you've
say
gathered that.
though, we are fans of keeping the decision-making power with the client. And so sometimes if we engage with say a lawyer, well, we might feel like, oh gosh, this is great. They're going to tell me what to do. And most lawyers are very, very competent and they probably will tell you the right thing to do under the law. The thing to remember is that might not be the right thing for your family. Okay, so okay, don't
Mm,
hand over your decision-making
yeah,
power. Get some strategy, get some advice, get the information. That's
yeah,
key, right?
yeah.
Getting the
Gathering
information.
talking to these different experts,
Mm,
gathering that information, then laying it right in front of yourself and making a bit more of an informed decision once you know what you now know. Because when we get married, we never think we're gonna get a divorce, do we? We never think we're gonna be separated. So we don't know what we don't know
mm,
until you're in it. And then it's overwhelming and it's a lot to deal with. So just slow it down, break it down, gather information, and then hopefully you can make a better choice and a better decision without as much fear. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
thank you, Nikki. That's been really helpful, and hopefully everyone's questions have been answered. And thanks to those who have joined us tonight. Someone says, "Great session, thank you." So that's great. Thank you for the feedback.
and of course
Um,
we've got our third in the series, don't we, on Monday?
Monday,
And then we will be running more of these webinars. They won't be necessarily once a week, but we will be doing
hmm,
some more of them. So we'll at any
yeah,
time, if you'd like us to stop sending you emails, please do let us know. But yeah, we will put some more
yeah.
information out.
Yeah, perfect. And just keep an eye on the website. That's where we'll advertise when the next lot of webinars come up after Monday night's one. So, and also the links will be on the website for you to watch at any time at your
Yeah.
leisure. So they're always there to help you navigate this process. And if you need more support and more advice, then reach out to us and we can put you in touch with the right coach to suit your needs and your situation, because we'll have our different aspects of specialities as coaches. So we're all here to help and support and guide.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you for joining us, and you can go and enjoy your evenings now.
Ka kite.